Hi, I'm Jennifer Zollet.
And I'm Larkin Bell. Welcome to our podcast, A Female Lens. This week, we're introducing our new monthly collaborative series in partnership with Free the Work, which is a curated talent discovery service of women and underrepresented creators. Free the Work is a nonprofit founded by Alma Harrell, whom we recently interviewed.
For our first episode of the series, we interviewed Liza Mandelup, director of the new documentary film Jawline. She talks to us about her process and approach to documentaries, how she stays inspired to keep working, and her experience in the commercial world. Watch Jawline on Hulu now. Thanks so much for joining us, Liza.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So, your new documentary, Jawline, looks at modern-day childhood and the starvation for love and acceptance through the world of social media. What first drew you to this material?
I think it started with me thinking about my own teenage years, and I was kind of thinking about telling a story in that space because I remember it just being such an intense time with so many everything felt very extreme, so many extreme emotions. But then I started thinking about how it must be so different today to be a teenager and to experience all the things you go through, but have to deal with all the technology that's become such a integral part of your life. And I just started thinking about how like teenagers are developing who they're going to become. Teenagers are like developing their identity while also having to figure out who they are in real life and online. And so I just started thinking about like what kind of story could I tell in that world. And I started doing research and I found these things called meet and greets, which you see in the film. And it was kind of like a snowball effect from there. And I was like, well, I have to tell a story that takes place in the world of meet and greets and live broadcasters. And I just kind of started and went on the road, really.
I'm curious, what drew you especially to Austin? Because the story centers around Austin.
Well, I think I actually spent a year filming without a main character. So I was in the world trying to figure out what I wanted from a character. I definitely didn't know that right away. And I went to all these different events and went on tour with a couple people. And I definitely had like a lot of false starts with people that I thought could maybe be main characters. It was essentially like everybody I was meeting was kind of like my casting scout, where I would be like, I'm looking for someone that I could follow from the moment he decides he wants to become a live broadcaster and he wants to drop everything and give this his all. And I would just kind of sprinkle that around wherever I was. And then someone had randomly showed me him on the app YouNow. And we went and we met him. And it was like, he was the first person that I felt like was so genuine, and that I could really actually get behind and root for. And I felt like he had this like very wide-eyed, naive perspective that I felt like if I follow him, there will be a story. And it was just kind of a hunch. And you just take a gamble on someone really in documentary where you're like, I feel like if I follow you, you will take me to interesting places and we will meet interesting people and I can make a film about that.
You kind of just hinted at this, but was there anything when you were first tackling this project, did you have a specific story in mind that you were looking to tell? Or did it really just come, when you met him and that's kind of how was there something you were really looking for to examine?
I think that I was thinking a lot about like my own experience as a teenage girl. And so I kind of felt like I was thinking a lot about how that time I was thinking about my own time as a teenage girl, and I was thinking about how it's a time of loneliness and you feel like no one is listening to you and no one cares about the things that you're going through. I felt like I definitely wanted to tell it from the female perspective at first. And I actually had made a short called Fangirl, which follows a bunch of girls who go to meet the same boy that they're all madly in love with. And they were so obsessed with getting to know these boys in a real way. Like, they were like, I just really want to know him. Like, I really want to hang out with him and spend time with him and just do normal things with him and be normal with each other. And those were like all the things they would say. And I got the idea through talking to them to follow the boys, because I felt like there was another side to what they were putting forward. The girls were always very transparent. You know, they were who they were, and that was beautiful. But I felt like there was like a story to uncover if you peel back what's behind the persona that they had as being a live broadcaster.
There's this one scene where there's the girls kind of meeting one of the dudes, I forget his name, but then they take a photo and like he puts his fingers on her mouth and they take the kiss. Like, take the kiss. I mean, that's kind of what it was. Yeah. Oh, it's called the stage kiss. Okay. Yeah, I was so fascinated by that moment. Was that something that you just kind of discovered while witnessing all of this?
Actually, one of the girls, I mean, it was a great moment that just happened very candidly, because also if you look at that scene in the film, the photo the girl is taking, my DP is just straight up in the shot because he's facing them. And so like her photo just has like this like cameraman like hanging in the middle of it. So and she was happy with that. Like, she didn't care what was in the background just as long as she got her kiss. But it was actually in the short that I made before this, one of the girls said that one of her favorite boys was really bad at the stage kiss, and she could always slightly feel his lips every time that they did it. And so he was her favorite. And so I kind of discovered it before, and I was like, this is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
It's like this PG, like, sort of way of them getting extra access to them on a physical level.
Yeah, it was fascinating because it's like showing something. It's like the gesture of it, but it's like kind of hollow because it's not actually real.
I know. It's like there's like the action of like putting your fingers like between the kiss. I'm like, it's very, I mean, but they'll take whatever they can get, you know? They want to just be as close to the boys as humanly possible, you know? And even in that scene, you could see like the girls like don't want to leave. Yeah. They just kind of linger around.
Yeah, I love that scene. I thought that was great.
Thank you.
One other specific question about the film. I was really fascinated by the manager character, essentially.
Michael.
Yeah, and how intense he was about basically running this business. And I feel like that's kind of touching on what you were talking about in the beginning of like they're, you know, creating their identities as a person and also this identity as like a social media star and basically business. And I was wondering if you could talk about his role in it all.
I think that Michael is all about calculations and getting the statistics and knowing the business side of it. And he lives in that house with all the boys that he manages. And so he's feeding them all of these facts on a daily basis. And so they become more of a well-oiled machine in the system, and they're actually directly responding to what works. Oh, if we post like this, like we get more likes and our engagement is up because we just did that. And like they kind of get like direct feedback, as opposed to Austin, who's at the other end of the spectrum, where he's just doing what he thinks can change the world, you know? Like he's not necessarily, he doesn't really understand what works, and he doesn't really understand like if he's doing it right or not, and he's just kind of going with what he thinks can get him famous. And so I think that the juxtaposition of those two was really interesting to me, where you know, and Michael, I was just talking to Michael today even, like, and he was telling me about like voice that he represented that he no longer represents, that just like fall off completely because they think that they can do it on their own, because they think that they have access to the app, so that I could just do it on my own. But Michael is like living proof that it's all extremely calculated if you want to make it in their specific world. And I actually knew this from the beginning. I knew something was up because when I first tried to get access to filming with one of these boys, I was like, this is going to be easy. Like I'm online, I'm on social media. I'm going to just DM one of the boys that I want to film with, and they're going to like look up my work and we'll start shooting together. And every single boy that I looked up, no matter if he had like 10K followers or like 1 million followers, had a manager. And I was like, does every single person have a manager? And that made it more complicated to get through because I'm immediately setting up like a business transaction with someone. And so it was like I had to go it just made it like it wasn't this like direct line, but I also was like, why does everyone need a manager? And like, what's going on with that? Like, is it legit? You know, because some of these managers were just so random to me. Like, they had no experience in the world. Because I mean, the live broadcasting system is like new, so it's not like anyone is a veteran in it. And so it was just like a bizarre interaction with everybody.
Okay. Well, I guess speaking of that, the documentary felt very intimate, almost as if we were hanging out with the teens themselves. How did you work to establish that trust with the teens involved?
I think that I keep everything very casual when I'm shooting, where it's not like we show up and like, you know, sit down, like the interview, we're shooting. It's very casual. And also like my crew is we work together in a way where we're like all friends, and we show up and we all become friends with everybody we film. It's not just like if I'm taking a break for a second to do something, like my sound guy is there talking to like Austin's mom and hanging out with his sister, and my DP is like laughing with one of his friends. And it's like, we don't, like, the crew doesn't just check out when they're not filming. And so it creates this space where everybody like is like, oh, are you here for the film, or are you here to hang out? Like, we just keep it as like not professional as possible. And I feel like that, and it like ultimately works in my advantage. But I also choose characters that I feel like I can spend time with, and I have to like really care about them or want to like develop a relationship with them. And I think that a lot of the characters that I filmed with, that I was like, this isn't going to work, it was like I didn't feel that way about them. And making documentaries is a chance to like get close with someone that you have seemingly nothing in common with. And it's this really weird relationship where I spend a lot of time with this person that if we weren't making a film, I don't know if I'd spend any time with you ever, but I become like family to them. And so I kind of always think about what a strange thing to drop into someone's life and to become this person that like, you know, everyone in their family talks to. Or just like they call you regularly because they have to tell you everything about their life, but I just like showed up out of nowhere. And I think I don't know, I thrive in those spaces of like just finding something totally out of my comfort zone and then making it completely comfortable. I think that that's like what excites me about documentary, is like when you're first starting out, you're kind of choosing this fantasy that you have, like what world would I want to live in? And I can't say that Jawline was like that exactly for me. Like I kind of ended up there by like different circumstances, but it was more like it was more me just being like, I want to like revisit my teenage self. And you know, docs are personal even when they're not, or when they're seemingly not.
Yeah. What a gift to like explore humanity in that way.
Yeah. I mean, I think I did that a lot growing up. Like I would just like meet people randomly and go hang out with them and show up to a party with them, and someone would be like, oh, how'd you guys meet? And they're like, we just met like outside, you know. And like and I worked as a street scout too for a while, so I just kind of been very comfortable being a very random person to people. So I think that the more comfortable you are like that, it puts like someone else at ease.
So you received the Sundance Documentary Fund grant for Jawline, and it went on to premiere at the 2018 Sundance Film Festival, where you won the Special Jury Award for Emerging Filmmaker. Can you tell us a little bit about all of your Sundance experience?
I mean, that was just crazy. I think I was like, I just can't even believe that we got in. I mean, the film was made in such a vacuum. We didn't like do any test screenings or anything. It was just kind of the intimate crew that worked on it, and the producers, the people that worked at the production company or whatever saw the cuts. But I think that it was like, oh my God, this is going to be like real kind of moment. And actually, I think when when we were trying to get into a festival, I hadn't even thought about what comes after that. Like, I just remember making the film and being like, get into like the best festival. And obviously we wanted to get into Sundance, but I remember not even thinking about like what happens after that. Like after we got in, I was like, wait, what happens next? You know, it's my first time. Like, what do you do now that you're in? But the actual festival was like so inspiring, meeting like so many different filmmakers and all kind of being at the same exact place where you're all like, you don't know the future of your film, but you know you're here and you're gonna have dialogue with people about it, and you're at the best festival, but you don't really know what the life of it's going to be, and you're all really nervous. So I think that it's like this bonding experience with the other filmmakers, and I've seen a lot of them on the festival circuit since and stuff, and I've never had that actually. I've kind of done a lot of stuff where I never really felt like I had like a community of like directors. I feel like I'm like on the road a lot with like different like crews and stuff, and I have like a few good friends who are directors, but like to be part of a larger community of people like that felt like something that I didn't even realize was missing.
What was it like watching your film for the first time with the audience at Sundance?
It was terrifying. Because when we were filming, we were laughing a lot. Like, we had a blast filming, and we were like cracking up all the time. And like when we were watching the footage, we were laughing a lot. And then when we cut it initially, we laughed a lot. And then something happens like a year into editing where you stop laughing, and it becomes very logistical and very serious, very much like, how are we going to make this? And by the time we got to Sundance, I remember forgetting that it was funny. And then when we screened it with the audience, it was like a laugh track the whole time. And then people walking out saying that they were completely horrified. And when that happened, I was like so excited. I was like, okay, so they think it's funny. That's great. Because I was just nervous people weren't gonna laugh. Because people take docs seriously. And I think that you could take a film seriously, but still there could be awkwardness and comedy in it, and especially in doc, where I think that sometimes people don't expect that going into a documentary.
You first started out as a photographer. Can you tell us about that and what drew you to photography and how it contributed to you finding your way into filmmaking?
Yeah, I think I was someone that like knew I had to make stuff, but I didn't, and I loved films, and I wanted to be a filmmaker, but it wasn't like when I was starting out that I knew it wasn't realistic to just like immediately start making, the kind of films that I wanted to make. Like, I needed to be closer to something that was tangible. And I also am very like hands-on with everything. Like, I don't sit and write something for a long time. I don't even research something for too long. Like, I kind of just get an idea and I'm like, I just need to get in there and start shooting and see what it can become and stuff, or just I need to be around the people, the stories about and stuff. And so it felt like picking up a camera and like shooting was just like natural for me to figure out what kind of stories I wanted to tell and stuff. And then, it turned into like an obsession where I would shoot every single day, and I would like develop photos every week. And I just had like tons and tons of photos, and I started making photo books. And then I think I thought I was going to be a photographer, but I kind of felt unsatisfied by the end result, where I felt like, I put all this work into making a photo book that I handmade. I published it myself, but I did the whole design, and I like spent like months like tweaking every photo perfectly, and then I finished the book, and I remember feeling like how many people see a photo book? It was just such an exclusive thing, and how many copies can I even make? Like, it just didn't feel like it had the power of like, but if you can upload something to online, so it has the chance of millions of people seeing it. And I just felt like the conversation around the things I wanted to say, I wanted it to be bigger. And I started making experimental short films that were following people and stuff, and had real people. And I remember someone being like, I think you make documentaries. I'm not sure, but I think this is a documentary. And, if it had a little bit more story, it wouldn't live in a gallery. It would live at a film festival. And it was a very backwards way of getting to it, where I kind of tried to figure out what is my process for saying what I want to say. And then what do I like? Like, what do I feel? What feels satisfying to me? And then it was kind of it became documentaries. And I think I'm still, now, I mean, I've been working in commercials, and I do a lot of branded content, and I make shorts, and I'm definitely like for sure a director. But I think that I still have that feeling when I have an idea where I don't like to pressure myself to be like, all right, come up with an idea for a narrative feature. I'm more like, I'm starting in this more abstract space of what do I feel like I have to say? What do I feel like I need to think about? What do I feel like I don't have answers to? And then what is the best medium to explore that in? Should I just get a camera and take photos, or should I, make a film? Should I write the film, or should I make it a documentary? Like I'm still open to thinking about all those different things.
Fascinating. I love that. Yeah, uniting that purpose of like the story and then the function of like how that story can be told most effectively, almost.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that documentary is just like a perfect place for that train of thought, because in the beginning the pressure's off. Like people, even when we had financing, the first financiers weren't like, tell me exactly where this is going. You get a lot of leeway to be like, oh, we know you're figuring it out. Go keep figuring it out. And it feels like this very like, I don't know. I feel like that's how I was in art school, where I was like, where like almost like the teachers would be like, yeah, go figure it out. You'll figure out what you're doing with it. And something about making a documentary, you still get to play like that, where it's like you don't have to come into it being like it's going to be exactly this. We're going to build the sets, and they're going to move from this spot to that spot. You can be like, this is my idea, and this is the world I'm telling the story in. But I don't know exactly where it's going yet. But these are the possibilities, and I think it's going to be great.
So you mentioned that you've worked with many online platforms such as Vogue, Nowness, and Days Digital, and in addition to directing commercials for brands like Adidas, Gap, and Chanel. How have these experiences influenced your philosophy of collaboration and creativity?
Well, some of it is like what you have to do to survive. I think that we should just talk about that to get that out of the way.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting too, and like how that influences the work. I'm just curious.
Yeah, because for example, the first year I was making Jawline, it wasn't financed, and I would go do a job, and I would take half the money from that job, and I would pay for my shoot. And I think that I was actually the most aggressive about taking work during that time, because it had this like immediate function where like if you're not in that space, you're like, oh, I could live off of what I have for a little bit. Like I was very much like, gotta take that job because I really want to go on a shoot that month, and I want to and I think that the truth is there's not a ton of money in documentary when you're making one, and maybe even after. You might not even sell your film, but it might be great. And I think that if you want to make documentaries, you have to do those other things. But I think that, obviously you should find more purpose in making commercials and branded content than that. Like you should like the people you work with or the things that you're getting to experiment with and stuff. So I think I have gotten also some incredible travel opportunities from doing commercials, and I get to work with the people who have believed in my work that wasn't paid. I work with a lot of the same people who, when I'm like, I have an idea, will you fly to Tennessee with me to just figure out if there's a film there? And they're down, and I'm like, and I can't pay you right now, but I have this job that I'm doing, and you can get whatever rate you want. Like it's sort of a system that it all when you can make it work, it works. But I definitely, like, every time I do a commercial, I'm like, I wish I was making a film. I'm not like on the commercial. And there are directors like that enjoy commercials. I come off of a commercial and I'm definitely not like, wow, inspired. I feel like everything was very stressful, and I'm always like, did I enjoy that? Like I'm asking myself that at the end usually. And I feel like at first it used to bother me that I didn't like commercials, and I felt kind of like is there something wrong that I don't like commercials? Because everybody tells me that's like what you're supposed to do as a director, is make commercials and do all this stuff. And but now I feel like a lot of people feel that way, and they do it because that's like what is that's where the money is and stuff. So I think that I have like a better attitude about it now, where I'm not like trying to make it something that I absolutely love. And I think that when I was starting out with commercials, I would try to make it something that I had to be really passionate about, because I'm a passionate person, and I feel like I work in the arts. So I'm like, you know, when someone pays me to do something, I'm like, I'm showing up to be like an artist and to be creative and to express myself and stuff. And there was like it was kind of a rude awakening in commercials, where I was like, people tell you you're paid for that, but that's not really what your job is on commercials. You guys are over there grinning.
No, I just like that answer. I felt like honest and real to experience. And I'm curious, like,
but I have, just to counter it, I have had some very positive experiences too, where with a lot of editorial stuff that I've done. So, you know, like the things that I've done for like all these different platforms that were branded and stuff, there's a lot of freedom in that. So I've done, and especially in the fashion world, there's been like so much, there's like, they kind of give you these parameters, and then they actually genuinely want you to make something weird and something cool and something really artsy. And so you kind of feel like you're actually getting paid to do what you do. I think that the other side is when it gets like very straight commercial work, and that can be kind of difficult.
I guess we're also curious, like, as you've worked in the commercial realm, have you noticed any change with like access to the work? I guess we know that like there's not an immense amount of opportunities for female directors in that space. I'm wondering if you have anything to speak to that.
I honestly do commercials because I have to. I definitely like want to spend all my time making art. So I think that if I could operate in a space where I do mostly, films back to back, that's the dream. I think that commercials are not like, I don't sit around and think about how to get a commercial. I've actually been like really like lucky enough that a lot of my early short films were through editorial platforms, and it was happening around the same time where I feel like it was like branded content was being birthed, and like I was in with a lot of these editorial sites who then switched over to being agency style, and where they would get branded work. And so I think a lot of my branded content came very organically through some of the editorial stuff that I did. And when I say editorial, it's like someone commissioned me to make a film about something, but it was mostly my film. And then that gave me some commercial opportunities, but I never chased a commercial, and I never thought about how can I get more commercial work, because I was always trying to be in the like narrative film, documentary film, episodic film space. So I kind of feel like if someone, hits me up to do a commercial, I'm interested, because I'm like, oh, great, you think I'd be great for something. That's a great conversation to have. I like that starting point. But I definitely am not thinking about how I get more commercial work. But I do have friends that are directors in that space, and they have like their own aesthetic and their own thing going on, and that has allowed them to become like an entity in the commercial space. But I think that now people are like looking for I just feel like there's a much bigger awareness of like we have to include diversity, and so there is this like effort to include diversity in a way that feels almost like people are worried what happens if they don't include diversity. And it's like this fear has been instilled that has actually been really positive to many people. And I think that I know many people that are benefiting from that. And I kind of question that sometimes, where I'm like, oh, if you're included just for the sake of being diverse, is that still good? And my answer is yes, because you're still being given a chance, as opposed to if you didn't go looking for that person. And I've definitely done projects too where like branded things where they have said, we really want to hire like a large female crew, and a mostly female crew, and at first, you know, maybe you like naturally your DP doesn't know an entire, you know, department that's female, and the producer basically says to him, well, then find one, you know, and because that's what the client wants, or that's what the brand wants. And then, you know, you come out of that shoot and the DP now like has an entirely female crew they like to work with. And so I think that those sort of things that I don't know, like, you know, maybe they're coming from a place that is sort of out of fear now a little bit, because they feel like the pressure is on to do that. It's still trickling down to having a really positive effect.
So you're from New York, but now you live in LA. We're wondering, how has that influenced your creativity and therefore your work?
I think that, yeah, you're definitely inspired by your surroundings, but I actually travel a lot. So I think that where I live is more of like a place to reset. And LA is actually great for that. New York is like very chaotic, and there's no reset. It's just like go, go, go all the time. So I think that I don't necessarily like need to make work about like what's in my backyard. I'm more excited by like the chase and going on the road with a film. I think the greatest thing about living in LA is the immediate access to the industry. And so if you are someone that is all over the place and stuff, it's easy to be based here and have access to what seems like a lot of the best of the best in the industry, and also just the other side, the not creative side, to take meetings with and stuff. But I think that it was sheer coincidence that I had a character based in LA, because I didn't even meet Michael in LA. We met at a convention in Orlando. And he was moving to LA and getting like the mansion that's in the film. And so it just kind of worked out that way, which was amazing, because it is nice to shoot with someone at home. But I think that I actually sometimes think it'd be more convenient if I made more films in LA. So maybe I'll try to think of some.
So you have a lot going on creatively in a lot of different spheres. Where do you go to find inspiration and I guess kind of reset, like creatively?
I do feel like I live in a lot of chaos, because I feel like I keep myself really busy making a bunch of things. And I think that as an artist, like I always find that when something clears and I feel extremely bored, or like very much like I don't really have anywhere to be or something to do, is when I'm the most creative. And sometimes that happens accidentally, and sometimes you have to create that for yourself. So for example, I remember there was one time where I was like editing something, and I went into the edit and I cleared 2 weeks to be in the edit every day. And the editor was like, actually, like, I need 2 weeks to edit and then we'll meet. And I was just like, you know, bouncing off the walls. Like, I just have 2 weeks right now that I don't know. I have nothing. That feels like I have nothing to do. And that's the time where I just get like obsessed and start researching and like watching stuff, and I just kind of feel like I come up with new ideas. But sometimes you get really busy and you don't have that space, and you have to make it, where you have to be like, I will take this weekend, or I will like go away and work for a little bit and stuff. So I think for me it's about always creating a space that feels like you have nothing else to do but the thing you're doing. And that is so hard to do when you are just like working on, when you're trying to make money, you're trying to have a personal life, you're trying to make art, you're trying to figure it all out. And then you're supposed to have all this free time to think of things. Yeah. It's really hard. And I think that I always fantasize about, I look at it like these little like orbs that are all these different things in my life that I'm just like, when will they all meet up in one place and be happening in like the same space, where it's like I'll be making my money, where I make my work, and everybody I'm friends with will also be with me all the time, and like, you know, it'll be great. And I'm just like, it'll never happen that way, but you're always kind of trying to get things sorted out. And I think that one thing that I feel like when I went to art school, actually, that was kind of, I think about this a lot, where it was like one of the things we did was like a critique. You know, a lot of art schools do that, and it's like every week you have to report back what you've done that week. and it puts the pressure on you to think about like how you're progressing your work every week. And I feel like that's something I've kept with me, where I have this like check-in with myself of like, how did you advance your projects this week? How did you come up with something like new this week? Like, are you any further along than you were last week? And I feel like keeping that with check in with myself makes me kind of put the pressure on myself to be like, if the answer is no, well, you better start working. Because creativity doesn't always just like, it's not this magical angel that like lands on your shoulder and like, you know, whistles in your ear. It's like, you have to sometimes like look for it. Like sometimes you have to go and you have to be like, I want to do something. Let me go find the thing I want to do. And let me, you know, put all these feelers out and see what sticks. And you have to like, sometimes you have to make yourself make work. It doesn't always just like you wake up in the middle of the night and you have an idea.
Awesome. So on that note, we will end with our rapid response segment, 3, 2, 1, action. It's how we end every interview. 3, your favorite or most influential film?
Streetwise by Mary Ellen Mark.
2, dream person you want to work with?
I don't know, guys. There's too many.
1, best advice you've ever received?
Have patience.
And action, what are you most looking forward to right now?
Making work. Making work when I feel like I have the opportunity to have people ask me, what do you want to make? Because that wasn't always the case.
And where can people follow you on social media, etc.?
Instagram, Twitter, everywhere. Basically, you can just Google me, find me on something. I'm definitely alive and well on the internet.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You can find us at afemailelens.com and at afemalelens on Instagram and Twitter. You can email us at afemalelens@gmail.com. And you can download the show anywhere you listen to podcasts and on Apple Podcasts, where we'd love it if you left us a review.
Our theme song was composed by Jesse Nelson. Our logos are by Megan Cafferty. This podcast is produced by Jennifer Zollet and Larkin Bell.